Ask most drivers in New York how many tickets it takes to lose a license, and they'll usually picture a long history of problems. Years of bad driving, plenty of citations, maybe a serious crash or something like reckless driving on their record. In their minds, having your license suspended is something that happens to other people, people who drive in obviously dangerous ways. Surprised, but beginning in 2026, that assumption can quietly put completely ordinary drivers at risk. Under the updated rules, just 2 routine tickets, the kind that are written thousands of times a day, can be enough to put your license on the line. Pause, not 10 tickets, not 5. In some situations, just 2. What makes this change so risky is that most people are still thinking in terms of the old system. They believe they have more room for error than they actually do. They think a couple of minor mistakes are annoying but harmless. Meanwhile, the state has adjusted the point system in 3 different ways at once. The total number of points allowed before suspension dropped. The number of points assigned to some common violations went up, and those points now stay active on your record for a longer period. Put all of that together, and everyday driving habits, a little extra speed, glancing at your phone in heavy traffic, missing a work zone sign, can now add up much faster than most people realize. In this video, I'm going to walk you, step by step, through how that math works. Once you see the way the new rules are structured, it becomes very clear how 2 normal-looking tickets can put someone right at the suspension line. We'll also look at a realistic scenario where a single traffic stop could technically give a driver enough points to reach that line in one night, without any crash or obviously wild behavior. We'll break down the specific rule changes, the 3 types of violations that now carry the highest risk, and a lesser-known category of tickets that can quietly add points to your record even if you never get pulled over for speeding. If you drive at all in New York, to work, to school, for errands, to see family, or as part of your job, understanding these changes can make a real difference in whether you keep your license or suddenly find yourself without it. Hi, I'm Artur, and today we're going to go through one of the biggest recent changes affecting New York drivers. Over the last few months, the state has revised several parts of the driver point system. On paper, the updates look technical, but once you translate them into what happens during real-world driving, they dramatically change how quickly a normal driver can accumulate enough points to be at risk of suspension. A lot of people assume that only dramatic violations, very high speeds, obvious reckless driving, or serious crashes are what really put your license at risk. The reality under the new system is very different. The biggest risk now comes from everyday choices that don't feel especially dangerous at the time. Cruising a few miles per hour over the limit because traffic is moving fast, picking up your phone for a quick check while you're barely moving in gridlock, or driving through a construction area without fully noticing that the speed limit dropped. Under the updated rules, those kinds of small mistakes stack up faster than before. In this video, I'll explain exactly what changed, why the new structure is tougher than the old one, and how 2 very common tickets can now equal the full number of points that puts your license at real risk. We'll go over which violations now carry the highest point values, how minor vehicle problems can unexpectedly add points, and some practical steps you can take now so you're not caught off guard when these rules are enforced. To see why this really matters, start with one key number, 10. 10 points is now the level at which your New York license can be considered for suspension. Under the previous rules, you could accumulate up to 11 points within an 18-month period before the DMV would look at suspending your license. 11 points wasn't a huge cushion, but there was a little breathing room. A couple of lower-level tickets spread out over that time usually didn't push someone all the way to the edge. That cushion has effectively shrunk. Beginning February 26, 2026, the threshold drops to 10 points. On its own, losing a single point of allowance might not sound like a big deal, but it didn't happen in isolation. 2 other major changes were made at the same time, and once you combine all 3, the system becomes much stricter than it looks at first glance. Change number 1. The threshold itself moved down from 11 points to 10. Change number 2. Points remained active on your record for longer. Previously, points counted against you for 18 months. Under the new rules, they're counted for 24 months, a full 2 years. That's 6 extra months where every ticket you receive still contributes to that 10-point total. Violations that would have stopped counting sooner now overlap more often with newer ones. Change number 3. And this is the one a lot of drivers haven't heard about yet, is that several of the most common traffic violations now carry higher point values than before. So now we have fewer points allowed in total, more time for those points to accumulate together, and higher penalties for exactly the kinds of tickets people get all the time. When you put those pieces together, the room for error shrinks quickly. What used to look like 2 or 3 small mistakes spread out over a year and a half can now push you close to the 10-point limit within a 2-year window. Drivers who think they're safely below any suspension risk may suddenly be much closer to the line than they realize, simply because the math changed. And when you look at how 2 very typical tickets add up under the new structure, the risk becomes much easier to see. Let's walk through an ordinary situation. You're driving on the New York State Thruway. The posted limit is 55 miles per hour, but traffic around you is closer to 65 or 70. Like most people, you match the flow, so you're not the one car everyone has to go around. A trooper clocks you at roughly 13 miles per hour over the limit and pulls you over. You get a speeding ticket. It's annoying, but not surprising. You pay it, or maybe you go to court and it gets reduced a bit. Either way, you get on with your life. A couple of months later, you're stuck in heavy evening traffic, barely moving. You glance at your phone for a moment to check the route, confirm your ETA, or see if a family member texted you. You're not speeding and you're not weaving. You're just sitting in stop-and-go traffic and looking down at your screen. An officer notices the phone in your hand and pulls you over. It feels like a minor slip. After all, you know plenty of people this is where the gap between what people think the rules are and how they actually work becomes a real problem. Many drivers are still operating with the old mental model. 1 or 2 tickets are a nuisance, but don't really threaten your license. Under the 11-point, 18-month structure with slightly lower penalties, that was often true. Under the new rules, that same behavior can put you right at the edge. Now that we've gone through how the point system itself changed, the next logical question is, which specific violations are most likely to push you toward that 10-point mark? There are many different possible violations in New York law, but only a few categories account for most of the points drivers receive. Under the revised system, 3 of these are particularly important to understand. The first is one nearly every New York driver has done at some point, driving a bit over the speed limit. Not racing, not extreme speeding, just drifting a few miles per hour above what's posted. Maybe you're keeping up with traffic, passing a slower vehicle, or you simply don't notice that your speed has crept up. Previously, being caught going 1 to 10 miles per hour over the limit cost you 3 points. Still something you'd rather avoid, but it felt like a lighter penalty. 2 of those tickets in an 18-month period would total 6 points, still below the old 11-point line. Under the new rules, that same low-range speeding ticket is now 4 points instead of 3. That 1 extra point matters. If you receive 2 of those tickets within the new 24-month window, you'll be at 8 points. 8 out of the 10 points you're allowed before facing possible suspension. At that stage, a single additional issue, like a phone ticket or one of the smaller violations we'll talk about later, can push you to or past the threshold. This is important because minor speeding is one of the most common violations officers write. It often doesn't feel serious. Many people think everyone goes a little over the limit. But under this updated system, a little over corresponds to higher point values and builds up faster. The second major risk category is handheld cell phone use while driving, including texting. Under the old rules, this was already treated as serious at 5 points. Under the new structure, a handheld phone or texting ticket has been raised to 6 points. That means a single moment of picking up your phone behind the wheel can now use up more than half of your entire 10-point allowance. Part of what catches people off guard here is how the law defines use. Many drivers assume that if they only touch the phone when the car isn't moving, for example, at a red light or in stop-and-go traffic, they're being safe enough. Legally, that's not how it works. If you're in the driver's seat, behind the wheel, and in a lane of traffic, you can generally be cited for handheld device use even if your car is stopped at that instant. Checking a notification, briefly scrolling, or tapping your GPS can all qualify if the phone is in your hand. Now put those 2 violations together under the new point values. 1 modest speeding ticket for a few miles over the limit, 4 points. 1 handheld phone ticket, 6 points. Together, 10 points. That's the new suspension line. The third violation type has many driving instructors and legal professionals especially concerned, because under the revised system, it carries one of the highest point penalties you can receive from a single, ordinary traffic stop. That is speeding in a construction work zone. Construction zones are common across New York, on the Thruway, the BQE, the Long Island Expressway, Route 17, interstates like 390 and 490, and many other roads. If you drive regularly, you've almost certainly passed through long stretches of cones, barriers, lane shifts, and flashing signs. Some projects last only weeks, others go on for months. Speed limits inside these zones are often reduced noticeably to protect workers and to account for narrower lanes or sudden lane changes. The challenge is that many drivers either don't clearly notice when the limit changes, or they underestimate how far above the new limit they're going, especially if other cars around them are still moving quickly. Under the new system, any speeding in a construction zone now carries an 8-point penalty. That's 8 points from a single ticket, even if you're not going dramatically over the work zone limit. Remember, your total allowance is 10 points. So one work zone speeding ticket alone can leave you just 2 points away from the suspension line. If you already had a minor speeding ticket earlier in the year, or a phone ticket several months before, that one construction zone citation could be enough to take you over. For people who often drive on highways where road work appears regularly, this is a serious background risk. It's easy to miss a changed limit late at night, in poor weather, or when you're unfamiliar with the area and focused on navigation. You may feel like you're just going with the flow, without realizing that the flow is now above a lower, temporary limit. On top of these, there's another change that has received much less attention but can have real consequences: equipment-related violations. These involve the condition of your vehicle itself, things like lights, windshield condition, and inspection status. In the past, many of these were treated primarily as fix-it issues. A burned-out tail light, an expired inspection sticker, or a missing license plate light might result in a warning or a fine, but not points. Under the revised system, several of these equipment violations now carry 1 point each. 1 point doesn't sound like much until you remember that you only have 10 to work with. And the difference between sitting at 9 points and crossing into double digits can determine whether you face a suspension hearing. These violations are tricky because they're often invisible to the driver until an officer points them out. A bulb can fail without warning. An inspection can expire during a busy month when you forget to schedule it. Window tint that seemed fine when you bought the car may not meet current standards. Under the new rules, each of these issues can now add a point that remains on your record for up to 24 months. Those small points can combine with speeding or phone tickets later and put you in real trouble. To see how fast all of this can come together, consider another realistic example. You're driving home late on Route 17 after a long day. It's raining, visibility is poor, and you're tired. Traffic is light, so you're mainly focused on staying alert and getting home. Ahead, there's a construction zone that was set up recently. The usual limit on that stretch is 55 miles per hour. You're traveling around 63, which feels like a normal highway speed to you. Between the darkness, the rain, and fatigue, you don't fully register that the work zone signs now say 45. A state trooper sitting in the median pulls out and stops you. From your perspective, this seems like a typical "you were going a bit fast" stop. While the officer is writing a ticket for speeding in a construction zone, they walk around your car. They notice one of your tail lights is out, something you hadn't seen. Then they glance at your windshield and see your inspection sticker expired last month. You plan to take care of it, but work and life got in the way. What felt like one mistake has now turned into 3 separate violations. Speeding in a construction zone, 8 points. Broken tail light, 1 point. Expired inspection, 1 point. 8 plus 1 plus 1 equals 10 points. In the course of a single stop on a rainy night, with no crash and no obviously extreme behavior, you've reached the full 10-point level. Scenarios like this aren't theoretical puzzles. They're the kind of thing that can happen to responsible, careful drivers who are tired, distracted, or unaware of a minor vehicle issue. Under the old system, a combination like this might not have put you immediately into suspension territory. Under the new rules, it can. Once a driver reaches 10 points, the situation moves from the roadside to the DMV. The typical next step is a notice from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles informing you that your record has reached the level where suspension is possible. That notice usually requires you to appear for a hearing. At that hearing, officials review your driving history. Look at the violations that brought you to 10 points and decide whether to suspend your license and for how long. Suspensions can range from roughly a month to as long as a year, depending on the details and your past record. During a suspension, you are generally not allowed to drive at all, unless a very limited hardship or restricted license is approved in specific cases. That means no commuting to work, no quick runs to the store, no school drop-offs, just this once, no short drive for any purpose. If you drive anyway and are stopped, driving with a suspended license is treated far more seriously than a regular ticket. It can be charged as a misdemeanor with significantly higher fines, possible jail time, and an extended suspension period. In addition to the legal issues, there are important financial consequences. In New York, points do more than affect your ability to drive. They can also trigger additional costs. One key example is the driver responsibility assessment. Once you accumulate 6 or more points within an 18-month span, the state can charge this separate fee. The base charge is $100 per year for 3 years. For every point above 6, there's an additional $25 per year. So if you reach 10 points, that's 4 points over the 6-point trigger. For extra points times $25 is another $100 per year, on top of the base $100. That means you owe $200 per year for 3 years, $600 total, paid directly to the state, separate from any fines or court costs you already paid for the tickets themselves. Then there's insurance. Insurers regularly review driving records. Multiple violations, especially those with high point values or those associated with a suspension, can cause your premiums to increase significantly. Some drivers see their rates double. Others may face increases of $2,000 or more per year. Those higher premiums can remain in place for several years. Over a 5-year period, that can easily add up to $10,000 or more in extra insurance costs, all stemming from a small number of tickets that didn't feel catastrophic when they happened. Beyond money, you have the practical problem of not being able to drive. For people whose income depends on driving, rideshare and delivery drivers, contractors, home health aides, field technicians, sales professionals, losing your license can mean losing your job, at least for a time. Even if driving isn't officially part of your job, your daily life is affected. A 20-minute drive can become a 90-minute bus and train commute. Getting groceries or taking kids to activities requires relying on family, friends, or expensive rides. Many people don't fully appreciate how much they depend on their license until it's gone. Some end up changing jobs or locations. Others move closer to work or to public transit. For many, the loss of independence is as difficult as the financial impact. All of this is why knowing how these new rules work before you're affected by them is so important. Once points are already on your record, your options are more limited. Preparation is your best protection. So, what can you do right now to protect yourself under this new system? First, find out exactly where you stand today. Don't guess about your point total. Because points now stay active for 24 months, a ticket you received almost 2 years ago may still be counting against you. The safest approach is to log in to the New York DMV's online services or request an official driving record and see how many points you currently have and the dates those points were added. If you discover that you're already at 6, 7, or 8 points, that's crucial information. It means you're closer to the 10-point line than you might have thought, and even one more ticket could have serious consequences. Knowing your real number lets you adjust your driving and consider additional steps before it becomes an emergency. Second, make sure your vehicle itself isn't setting you up for avoidable points. Take a few minutes to inspect your car. Do all tail lights, brake lights, and turn signals work? Is your license plate clearly visible, properly attached, and well lit? Is your inspection sticker current? Are there any large cracks in your windshield that affect visibility? Does your window tint appear darker than what's typically allowed? These details might seem small, but under the new rules, some of them can now carry points if they lead to a ticket. Replacing a bulb, renewing an inspection, or fixing a basic equipment issue is almost always cheaper and easier than dealing with an unexpected point on your record. A quick walk-around check once in a while, or asking your mechanic to look for these issues during routine service, can prevent unnecessary violations. Third, consider taking an approved defensive driving or point reduction course if you already have points. In New York, Eligible drivers can complete a state-approved course that can reduce the number of points counted against them for suspension purposes by up to 4. The points remain on your full historical record, but for determining whether you cross that 10-point line, up to 4 points can be removed from the calculation. For example, if you're currently at 6 points, completing such a course could reduce your effective total to 2 for suspension purposes. Being at 2 instead of 6 gives you significantly more room before any new tickets become critical. Most of these courses take around 5 to 6 hours, and many can be done online on your own schedule. The cost is usually much lower than the fines from a single ticket, and in many cases your insurance company may also offer a discount for completing the course. Beyond those proactive steps, there are 2 specific driving habits that can dramatically reduce your chances of getting the highest risk tickets under the new system. The first is how you approach construction zones. Anytime you see orange signs, cones, or lane shifts ahead, assume the speed limit may be about to change, and possibly more than once. Even if you drive that road often and know the normal speed, treat each work zone sign as new information. Take a quick look at your speedometer and gradually slow down. Avoid using cruise control in or near work zones so you can react immediately if the limit drops again further inside. The second habit concerns your phone. With handheld phone violations now worth 6 points, keeping the phone out of your hands while you're behind the wheel is one of the simplest and most effective ways to protect your license. Before you start driving, set your navigation, choose your music or podcast, and then place your phone somewhere you can't easily grab it: a bag, the glove box, or the back seat. Use Bluetooth or other hands-free options if you must take a call. If a truly urgent message or call comes in, find a safe place to pull over and park before looking at your phone. The small inconvenience of pulling over is nothing compared to the cost, stress, and long-term consequences of 6 new points. All of these changes point toward one basic reality. On New York roads, the margin for error is about to get smaller. The revised point system takes effect on February 26, 2026, and once it does, these stricter rules will apply statewide. Fewer allowable points, higher values for common violations, and a longer period for points to remain active mean that everyday decisions can have bigger consequences than they did in the past. A little extra speed through a work zone, a brief phone check in heavy traffic, a small equipment issue you never noticed. None of these may feel dramatic in the moment, but under the new structure, they can combine to bring you right to, or even past, the suspension threshold. Drivers who understand this ahead of time will be in the best position to avoid those outcomes. By checking your record, keeping your vehicle in good condition, considering a defensive driving course if you already have points, and adjusting a few daily habits, you can stay comfortably below the new 10-point limit. This video is for general information only and is not legal or financial advice. Rules and enforcement practices can change, so always check the latest information from the New York DMV or consult a qualified professional if you have specific questions about your situation. Understanding how the system works now, before you're caught up in it, gives you the best chance to protect your license, your finances, and your ability to get where you need to go.